All right, so we're talking about what's happening in Unit 1. We're talking about what's happening in Chapter 15. And listen, Lincoln is going to bring up Reconstruction before the war is actually over with. When he brings up the Emancipation Proclamation, it's a way to either get the states back in or end slavery. The idea being is he doesn't want to be the president that broke the Union. He doesn't want to be the president that when he is done, it's two countries instead of one. So he wants to bring the folks from the Confederacy back into the Union. He's never going to admit that they had no right to be out. So what he's eventually going to bring up in presidential Reconstruction is what's called the Proclamation of Amnesty and Reconstruction. What he wants to do is he wants to bring them back in, say, listen, we don't want to punish anybody, we don't want to torture anybody, we don't want to penalize anybody, we just want to go ahead and go back to the way things were. Okay? We want to go back to the way things were. So he's going to welcome them back in with open arms. And what he's asking for in his amnesty and reconstruction policy is very minimal. Well, what this is going to do is upset Congress. It's going to upset a group called the Radical Republicans because Republicans are in charge. Why? Well, because most of the Democrats either A, changed parties, or B, were in the South, so they're not in the government at this particular point. So these radical Republicans are the ones that are running Congress, and they're going to say, yo, whoa, 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 Lincoln, hey, this is a congressional thing. So what they're going to do is authorize something called the Wade-Davis Bill. The Wade-Davis Bill will punish the South. It will punish the states in order for them to get back in. They're going to have to meet some pretty hefty benchmarks. And so what will happen is Congress will go, boom, here you go. And they'll drop the mic and they'll go on vacation. They're going to go on break. And then what will happen is Lincoln will look at this and go, there's no way in heck I'm signing this. But if I go ahead and veto it, they'll just go ahead and override me. So what he's going to do, it's called a pocket veto. He's basically going to stick it in his pocket. He's going to ignore it while they're on break. And what will happen is if the president doesn't sign a bill after a certain number of days, it becomes null and void. So he's just going to allow it to expire, which is really going to upset Congress. But what will happen is we will get the end of the war. We will get this presidential version of Reconstruction. He will start welcoming people in. And then what will happen is he's going to get shot in the head. The assassination of Lincoln is pretty much going to be the end of his bid for Reconstruction. Because what will happen is his replacement, his Vice President Johnson, will walk in and say, oh, hey, that's an interesting idea. I see that Congress is arguing with the president. I see that there's some issues along the way. You know what? I don't like the president's plan. I don't like Congress's plan. I'm going to come up with my own plan, Johnson's plan. Johnson... he was a Southerner, folks. He was a slave owner. He was one of those few Southern states that didn't secede. He's one of the few Southerners left in Congress. He's going to be picked as vice president in order to garner Lincoln a few more votes. When Lincoln is assassinated and Johnson takes over, people go, oh my goodness, this is not what we had planned. What he is going to do is he is going to not implement Lincoln's plan or Congress's plan, but he's going to institute his own plan called Restoration. And Restoration is not either of those plans. What he's going to do is he's going to set some minimal benchmarks. He's going to say this is a presidential prerogative, not a congressional prerogative. And what he will do is set some very low bars, except with the qualifiers of saying, listen, anybody who was involved in the Confederate government, anybody who was an active participant in the government, we're not going to give them any consideration. But if they want to come to me and ask me personally, okay, for a waiver on this, and they'll go ahead and get that. Here's what happens. Because Johnson is going to push his own agenda, it's going to blow up in his face. What we will get is we will get some actions against Johnson that put him on the ropes. They're going to create some laws, and these laws are all about setting Johnson up. It's setting him up for what is going to be the trial of the century, which is going to put him on the edge of being removed from presidential office. And he's going to have to concede to letting Congress go ahead and implement their version of Reconstruction, which is very punitive to the South. Okay, it's incredibly punitive to the South. Johnson didn't do anything wrong. It's the laws that Congress was able to make and to pass that set him up to be impeached. Well, what will happen is this. They're going to go ahead and create what's called military reconstruction. They're going to set some very high bars. They're going to create military districts in the South. They're going to go ahead and take over the South. They're going to go ahead and move the Army in. And they're going to say, listen, this is the way things are going to run. These are the way things are going to happen. They're going to say, listen, in order to get back in, you're going to have to go ahead and pass the 13th Amendment, which is abolishing slavery. Eventually, they're going to arrive at the 14th Amendment, which is the right to citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, which is going to be the right to vote for all males at that particular point. They're going to finesse a lot of things that are going to happen in order to allow these people back in, to allow the South back in. Now, if you look down the study guide, you'll see the Tenure of Office Act, Command of the Army Act. You look at Military Reconstruction Act. All those are parts of lining up Johnson to be impeached. He doesn't get impeached because somebody with enough sense realized he really didn't commit any crimes. But what will happen is this. It allows them to reconstruct the South because they want to punish them for what they've done. They want to change the entire culture of the South. With that, we're going to get the Union League. With that, we're going to get the Freedmen's Associations. With that, we're going to get quite a few things that are going to empower the male black population. This is only going to go so far, because what happens with this is significant. You can't force people to change. You can only force them to change for so long before it's going to give in. What will happen is it's going to become very expensive to maintain this occupation of the South. And because it becomes expensive economically, it's going to become expensive politically. In order to win elections, the Northerners, the Union, are going to do what's called waving the bloody shirt. They're going to say, look, these are the people that died. This is what happened. Here's people that were wounded to set you free. You should vote for us. Okay, that's waving the bloody shirt. That's only going to work so long because it's going to outlive its usefulness when it comes to that. What will happen is eventually we're going to get Ulysses S. Grant. He is, well, here's the hero of the North, folks. He's the hero of the Union. He is a leading general. What you have to know, if you've not watched the Grant episode that's on right now, Grant was a very determined general, and he had more soldiers than the South did. Because he had more soldiers to throw at the war, he's going to end up winning. The North has more people, it has more imports, it has more economy, it has more industry. It is outgunning the South, and they're going to win. What happens is we look at a change when Grant takes over. When Grant takes over, we're going to see a shift. Grant is not an effective president, all right? And so what will happen is when we bring the South back in, what we're going to look at is a trade-off in Congress and what we call a redemption of the South. Redemption, as in the South, is going to say, well, look, we all redeemed. That they're going to reclaim the old South, and because they're able to reinstill the old power system, it's going to be the same good old boy network. What you'll see is the rise of black codes. You'll see the rise of Jim Crow laws. You'll see the rise of the Ku Klux Klan. In spite of everything that the Union tried to change, they couldn't really change the structure of the South. And because it becomes politically and economically difficult to maintain this occupation of the South, when they withdraw the troops, the South is going to go back to the standard of the way things used to be. That becomes a huge problem, but it's part of the Compromise of 1877, and that's what ends up costing them the election. All right, in the next chapter, I'll go ahead and talk about what happens after Reconstruction.